Welcome to the Nobody Speaks podcast. Today, I have a very special guest coming to me from Los Angeles, California, Pete Mills of the band Sweet Kill, and also owner, operator, producer at the Audio Studio. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Right on.
Absolutely. Absolute pleasure. I was lucky enough to stumble across your music from our mutual friend Jason Corbett of the band Actors, who is also on the podcast. He had posted about the album, and I was like, "Oh, let me take a listen." Always on the hunt for new music, and Jason, as a songwriter and a producer, like he's always churning out good stuff. So I'm like, he's got a good ear for music, and played the record and was like totally into it. Like it was one of those right away. I was like, ooh, big choruses, catchy hooks, good synths, like the vocals going all over the place, because I'm a melody guy. My friends tease me all the time because I'm like, I can't listen to I need music with melody. I'm not an instrumental guy. I don't hate on it. It's just not for me. My connection to music has always been that. And absolutely loved the record. So I was glad we were able to kind of get in touch, sit down and talk a little bit about it, as it's a new album for you and for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a wonderful dissertation. I remember Jason, I don't know, maybe about like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, he's just like, yeah, man, like I've been following you on social media and just being totally inspired by like the fact that you just go in and you record what you need to do for the music that you're writing. And I think he was at a position where I really commiserate with a lot of artists, in the sense that, you're investing in your art and you're like booking studio time and you're trying to like get it right. And then the clock's ticking and then you're out like thousands of dollars, and it's just like depressing because it's maybe the wrong vocal tone or the wrong vocal emotion, and you got to re-sing it, book more time. And then like, and so I didn't really think anything of it, because back in the day when I got one of my first record deals, I just never like profited. I just kept buying gear. Just sort of over the years accumulated epic pieces of equipment, and over the years I just developed the skill set that I have. And so it was really cool to hear him sort of observe that and just like take back the night and being fully contained in what he's doing now in his space, Jackknife Sound. And I was like, I tried to get a cool studio name. Like I was thinking like Jackknife sounds so cool, but I just went with the most obvious thing possible. Like
it's an audio studio.
Studio that does audio is the Audio Studio. And then so like in that space, that man cave, that sort of inner sanctum, sanctuary, dojo, if you will. Speaking of martial arts, I just went so deep into helping other bands in LA as well. Like lots of labels got a hold of me, and I was doing a lot of work for labels and here and there, like work for hire and developing artists and stuff. And it's really awesome. And then so the reciprocation of the inspiration is then seeing Jason take on a full new trajectory with his art and being like kind of blindsided. Like maybe I blindsided him with like all the fact that I got like this gear and that gear, and I can now fully contain myself as a producer engineer. Then all of a sudden, like I was blindsided because I knew all the bands he's been in over the years, and I saw different sort of tones from like cowpunk to modern rock, radio stuff, and then just being like, wow. And we had some great powwow conversations going like, what was the catalyst? And he's like, I don't know. I just kind of started doing what I wanted to do rather than what I thought I should do. And just that basic simplicity is the mentality that I try to adopt in my art. And, I've like sent him some mixes, just, what do you think? And he'd give like umbrella type statements, like more reverb or sounds good or whatever. Or I think it's great hooks. And it's a really cool relationship. And thus, we just reconnected. I was at Hogwarts and Universal Studios. It's my new favorite spot to go, just to like work, like the staff there is like, you come to an amusement park to work on your I'm like, yeah, you better fucking believe it. Like I come in here and I sing all night, and then I edit the vocals at the castle. And when I was having a conversation with him saying how like Yeah, man, like it's all about like we have a rapport that goes back a while. So like let's use that. Let's, you know, cross promote and like sort of show people where we've come from and that sort of that the stomping grounds and then the niche that we've fallen into. I mean, dark wave, you know, darkness, dark and gothic, post punk
Yeah,
is sort of like,
it's got a million names to it,
yeah.
you know.
I've
Um,
researched it. I looked it up. It's like apparently Fascination Street was the song that codified darkwave.
I've read that somewhere. We probably read the same article because I have another podcast that I do about The Cure, just The Cure, called
Oh,
Fascination
wow.
Street. And that is the song that has always defined for me The Cure. That bass line, when I was 17 and joining my first serious band, I was already playing guitar, but I hadn't played bass. They needed a bass player. I went home, I sat in front of my amp, I put on The Cure, and I played along with Fascination Street. That I was like, if I could do that bass line, I could do anything. And that song to me was like just mind blowing when I first heard it, and it helped me learn to play bass by playing along with them. And that's one of the things I always loved about Simon Gallup's bass playing. Not an over player, but so tasteful. So like the way that it kind of coddled the rest of the songs and didn't fight the vocal or fight the guitar, you know. So that's it's funny that you bring up that song because that's my like, you know, that song for me, and that bass line, and I mean that whole record is one of my favorite albums. But
Well, even I even like researched his tone, and it's pretty much like the tone that I had when I first started playing bass. Bass was my first instrument, but I was in
okay,
a glam punk band at the time, and so they're always like they wanted a beefier tone. They wanted me to play less notes, and I was always
right,
like, I even have fights when I throw down my bass. I'm like, you guys don't value me or whatever,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and and it's interesting having like that band was like it got me a lot of recognition in the sense that we were playing lots, selling out shows, going on stadium tours, got a big record deal, whatever. It was huge, rags to riches kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
And it's like when that broke up and I started just like writing for the sake of it, I found like all of the Joy Divisionisms, the Peter Hook inspiration, all the stuff that like I retained and it was swimming around because
Right.
I had a Galleon Kruger 800 RB. Right?
Okay.
And I had the pickups from Duff McKagan, like I had it all
Mm-hmm.
dialed it in, you know, and
Yeah.
then I evolved to the Ampeg SVT to kind of be
Mm-hmm.
more genre appropriate for the band I was in. But I found myself going back to that tone and back to and it just all the things that were already there that just I didn't have the right avenue to explore were just like flowing out like effortless.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a Fender bass guy. Give me those. I put in quarter pounders.
Yep.
Uh, got a Sans amp pedal, Ampeg head, and I was like, I can almost get any tone right now. You know,
Yep.
like I could get it gritty, like I wanted to sometimes, like like Quicksand Slip. You know, like if I'm not sure if you know that
I'm
band, but
familiar with that.
yeah, Quicksand was a band.
Oh, yes.
Quicksand, yeah,
Yeah.
Walter Strevels, yeah. So
Yeah.
that whole do do do, that like, which he is now translated where Sergio is playing with Deftones, which was also kind of a similar bass tone that he brought with him from one band to the next. But I always tried to get that tone because it was versatile. I could get it clean, I could get it dirty, I could, play around with it, and versatility is the key to good music. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, anyone that tries to put themselves in a shoebox is just going to get stuck there. So it's funny how you're saying all those things that were kind of sitting, with you for years. Then when you just sat down and did what you want, and being able to record your own stuff, I really feel is that thing that gives it to you. So I love how, both you and Jason have that. And it's such a key thing. My best friend in the world, Scott Gross, he was most known for being a guitar player in a hardcore band here from Long Island called From Autumn to Ashes.
Mm-hmm.
He went to audio school, but then his band picked up, they got signed to Vagrant, and they were out touring nonstop, and he never really did anything with it. When he finally had a falling out with those guys and left, got back into recording, and then he was just writing the things he wanted, producing stuff for like me and our friends, and like that was his new outlet where he didn't have to be this metalcore band or emo or anything. It was just, I'm just Scott, you
Yeah.
know? And some of his best production and songwriting came thereafter. So this whole new insurgence of musicians being able to take back their creativity with being able to record on their own and release music on their own, I think has really opened up a beautiful thing that's going on right now.
Absolutely.
And it's I've gone years where I struggled to find new music that I like if it wasn't bands I already knew. So I would always just go back to the others. But I think this thing that like you and Jason and Actors and a lot of these bands have going on, you can tell it in the music. And I think that's what's now giving this. And I'm discovering stuff like crazy now, you know? And it's like, I'm about to be 44 years old and I'm loving the fact that I'm discovering new music every day, you know? And there was those times where I was just kind of stuck in the rut. I had my, you know, my top 10 favorite albums, the genres I liked, the mixes I would make, and that was it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you have this whole new world now, and it's really it's exciting for the music lover.
Well, it's interesting because the thousands of dollars both me and Jason combined have spent on like mixing time at the Epic Studio with the SSL or the tracking time and all that stuff. It's like to be able to do that at our disposal is like it's changing the game.
Yeah.
But then it's interesting. But then I see the other side of it as a business owner in the fact that I have a studio
Right.
in Hollywood, and so you know. But what I think that what makes it attainable for artists that I work with is that they know that I'm an artist and that I have a creative outlet for what I'm trying to do. So when I make suggestions, it's not for me to be like the righteous songwriter guru guy. It's just like I hear something that could be cool. Let's try it. I don't know if it's good or not, but you got to kind of try it. And I have this big like rule in the studio is that like let's not get too descriptive with our work.
Yeah.
Here. Like show me what you mean. Like if you don't like what I'm doing, then give me like 3 alternatives. Like that's the rule. It's like if you don't like something, then come up with 3 other avenues really quick rather than just say I don't like it, because that's kind of like, but that's the element of what I do, and that's the sort of service that I provide, not just with the fact that there's great gear in my studio and we can get really good tones, but like the most people I work with are coming to me to help them with the creative more so than the technical. I just so happens I can get really good sounds, and that's the benefit, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything, you know, in the technology can be tweaked a little bit later, but if the groundwork isn't there, it's not going to mean anything.
Yeah.
If you don't have a good foundation in a house, it's not going to matter how you decorate it. It's still going to be a shit house.
Yep.
You know? So that's the whole thing, is finding the person that can help get you that foundation. You know, I was the same way. There were times I'd go into the studio to record vocals and I'd have a really great chorus and I'd just have ideas for the verses lyrically. And I would be like, hey, listen, just hit record and give me a bunch of takes.
Yep.
You know, or like harmonies. That's when I would come up. I'd be like, all right, you're going to open up, run all the way through, open up another track, run it all the way through. And I would just let it come out in its natural way. And being able that I could do that because I was able to record with my, you know, 2 of my closest friends like Scott Gross and also my buddy George Fullen. He's recorded a lot of bands here on Long Island. I was able to have that rapport with them that I could do that. If I was just going into some studio and I was under time restraints of a big label, they'd be like, you know, listen to this guy and you've got 4 days for this and blah, blah, blah. We never had to do that. So I love that. Finding the creative space to create is the most important part. I've heard so many bands and, you know, read so many biographies of bands and terrible studio times and what it did for, you know, for the band and how it kind of hurt the creativity of the album. And that's why you get years and years later, remixes, remastered, you know, now you're spending money trying to get it right 10 years later, you know, instead of just having it come out right the first time.
I saw that documentary on, or it wasn't even, it's like a snippet on some like rock and roll diary type thing about the Foo Fighters, like going into the studio, dropping like $1 million over a period of a year to do a bunch of demos that ended up being completely scrapped. And so that was like, oh, okay. Like happens
Yeah.
to the best of them.
Yeah.
It kind of took the pressure off of me having to be like on my own, sort of like, I gotta get this. I gotta, it's like, what, if it ain't, as you said, if the foundation isn't there, in other words, the chorus, right? You just said you
Yeah.
walk into the studio with the chorus, you're good.
Yep. Give me the
Versus like
chorus.
verses are like, they can come and they can go. You can phrase it any which way. As long as that chorus is solid, we're good.
Yeah, and I've always been that guy too. A song with a great chorus and is it. I remember my friend George had told me, God, I can't remember the guy's name that wrote and sings on Time After Time with Cyndi Lauper.
Oh,
God,
yeah.
what is his name? I can look it up, but long story short, he gave advice to George that he said the verse should just make people think, the chorus has to make people feel. And he was like, and use words that you would use in a conversation with your friends.
Yes.
And he's like, that's the best songwriting advice I can give you. And then George had given that to me, and it was such a, big eye opener for me as a songwriter. I was like, wow. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It's little stuff like that you get from people in studios that mean the most. It's not the price tag. It's not the what albums got recorded there previous to it.
I want to share something here. I just pertaining what you just said, the 6 rules. Are you familiar with these?
No.
Number 1, never use a metaphor, simile, or other figure of speech which you're used to seeing in print. 2, never use a long word where a short one will do. 3, if it's possible to cut a word out, cut it out. 4, never use the passive when you can use the active.
Okay.
5, never use a foreign phrase, scientific word, or jargon word if you can think of an everyday English equivalent. 6, break any of these rules sooner than say anything outright barbarous.
That's good.
Kind of cool, right?
That is kind of cool. So we're giving all the listeners here today songwriting lessons.
Pretty much, right? And the current label that I'm on, like, they're super supportive of, like, they even offer the option to, like, they'll master your stuff as well. I just happen to do it all, but
right
now,
which
cool,
which label is that? So you have Young and Cold Records from Germany, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and there is a US label that's distributing here, or?
I saw this thing on Pavement. Remember Pavement?
Yes.
And they had Treble Kicker Records. Do you remember that? Like, that
Yes.
was their sort of thing that they which enabled their self-autonomy. So when they signed to Matador, it was licensed by Treble Kicker Records. Now, Treble Kicker Records didn't go around. I don't think they signed anyone at all. It was just sort of like a moniker. And so when I watched that, I was like, that's kind of interesting, because we were in the talks with, I was in the talks with Young and Cold, and I was thinking, well, the way that this is looking is that it would be something similar to that Pavement, Treble Kicker, Matador experience. So I thought, you know what? Like, we put on this night in LA called Shadow Zone Night. The moniker, that's the handle on Instagram. And it's like, we were trying to, like, it's right when things opened up in July, and everyone was like super stoked. We were doing really well. We had, like, every Monday night was this, like, cool experience. And then
like live music and DJs, or
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it was the Sweet Kill was, for the first little bit, we were going to be playing every week. So we were playing like once a week. It was a residency, and it was really cool. And in that process, like, at first I was just like, I just want to play a show, like, things are opening up.
Yeah,
please. And the woman at Harvard and Stone was like, let's just do a residency and have it be open-ended and see where it goes. So I was like, wow, that's a lot of work, but I think I'm up for it. And so she goes, we got to call it something. So then I got really creative. And I remember back in Vancouver, where me and Jason are from, I remember this night called the Twilight Zone. And it was like a golf night, right? It was my first experience where I just was like super intimidated, and like in like my late teens, going into this club with all these like goth people and like industrial vibes and like makeup. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna get my ass kicked. And I realized how cool goths are. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe I am one of them, or whatever.
Yeah.
I just was in a glam punk band at the time, but like, yeah, it felt like I was home anyway. So I was like, Twilight Zone, Shadow Zone Night. It's an event that happens. And then I started to think, okay, so if this is the event that we're doing, why don't we, if Shadow Zone Records, like what if it was this thing
Got it.
like
Okay.
it's Shadow Zone, and then we have the night, then we have records, and then who knows where it'll evolve from there. But that was the basis of it.
Got it.
So it's not like Shadow Zone is currently looking for artists. Like, no, it's not that. It's just that the Sweet Kill is released on Shadow Zone Records and the digital.
Got it. Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was checking out the Bandcamp. I was like, oh man, I was like, I want the vinyl, and I'm like, oh, I gotta have it come from Germany.
They're gonna ship it. They're
No,
like,
no, absolutely. Yeah, I saw it. That's great. I'm a vinyl guy. I mean, once I gave into the streaming world, whether people are against it or for it, my way to support the artist was to continue to just grow my vinyl collection, which I love listening on vinyl. So it's going to see bands live. It's grabbing their vinyl, their merch. I'd rather, okay, so I'm just gonna spend $9.99 a month on streaming or whatever, and it's giving pennies. But God, when everything shut down, I bought more band merch during COVID than when I was going to concerts, because I was like, well, I'm not spending money on the shows, so how can I support? And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go buy t-shirts. I'm gonna go buy represses of their records,
right.
things like that. Like that was the way to do it. So it's my favorite physical way to have the music.
Yeah.
I get that big artwork again, read those lyric sheets. That was such a big thing for us growing up. I remember unfolding the cassette to read the lyrics,
And it's like so small, but you're just super
Yeah.
into it. Like, oh my God, this song was produced by a different guy. Like, what happened?
Right. Yeah. Like I
What was
loved
the
looking
deal?
at that. This one was recorded in this year, and this one was so this one must have been an older one. And who's got backing vocal credits from some other band that you didn't even know they were on the album, all that little stuff that
Yeah.
you lose in the streaming world.
Like,
So
was
I
that
can do that on
in the
vinyl.
conversations were so much more like provocatively enthusiastic, in the sense that, like, we don't know, we can't just Google this information right now and find out, but
Yeah.
it was like sort of like everyone's word of mouth thing. Why did this happen, and who did what, and why and when? And it was like epic. I remember I just listened to the Gary Newman's Pleasure Principle recently, and it was such a rad experience of just like, oh yeah, side one's over, we got to go over and turn it to side
Yeah.
two because we're in the zone right now. It sort of had this, it enveloped the whole energy in the room. Just, that's the power of vinyl. It's like I've committed, like putting it on side one, song one, knowing that there's like a cycle of like, it's what, 30 to 40 minutes I'm going to be dealing with this, and there's an energy to that. And that's why I love the fact that the Sweet Kill is coming out on vinyl. I'm so stoked about it.
Yeah. And there's also that whole thing of when you flip it over, that first song on the B-side,
Yeah.
And that's where, I'm sure nerds like us think about that stuff. You got to have that song that's just past the middle. That's almost another kicker, another single per se, because when you flip it over, now there's another new anticipation of what you're about to hear, just like when you first put the needle down on this first song. So you get that experience twice when you're listening to a record, where it's a CD. I remember the first time I got a CD player that had shuffle, and you'd hit that. And then sometimes it was cool, but then sometimes it lost some things because certain songs went into each other for reasons.
Yeah.
Like
when My Michelle drops on side two of Appetite for Destruction, it's a statement. And when side one ends with Paradise City, that's a statement. And when Rocket Queen is the final, it's like, that's an anthem.
Oh God.
It's like, everything is so strategic. So that's how I look at, and it's interesting. I've had some feedback from Darkness already going like, the second half's stronger than the first. It's like, yeah, it was for a reason. But yeah, there is that element to it. Like I put Cold on side two for song one, side two, for a very specific reason, because I me and this woman from Toronto, we co-wrote that, and it was a heavy breakup I was going through at the time, and And she was like, I was just so bummed. I didn't want to do the session. And like our
Mhm.
PRO, SoCan, set it up. So SoCan down in LA, like whenever there's a Canadian artist coming through town, they'll reach out to other artists and they'll pair people. And
Right.
so we were the pairing of that week.
Mhm.
And I was just like, I so don't want to do
You're
this.
like, oh man, I want to sit on my couch.
Yeah, I just want to like listen to Disintegration on repeat. I can just deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
so she's like, oh my God, we do like placements. Are we going to do this? Are we going to do the song for me? Or I'm like, we can do whatever. This is just where I'm at. And she's like, oh, we got to do a song about that. I'm like, okay. And yeah, and then finally it's coming out. So, you know, songs are written way back and then they find their way at some point. By hook or by
Yeah.
crook, they get out there. And I'm so happy for this one to be like song one, side two, let's go.
Cold, definitely one of my favorite songs on the record. It so good. There's so many bangers on this album. Like I was just gave another viewing on my television of the video for Closer.
Oh wow.
I wanted to see it a little bit bigger. So I was like, I'm gonna throw this up on the television. Because the video is a beautiful, almost kind of sci-fi fantasy kind of theme to it, and it's very cinematic. I love how it's shot wide like that. Those colors, you know, the red, the shots bouncing back and forth, but then it takes away from that darkness in certain points where you're standing and there's a beautiful, like the sun and the skies in the background. So it has this kind of back and forth to it that's really great, which matches the song well. Now this who shot this video?
This guy named Lorenzo Diego, he's a guy that just like is from Italy and he does so much video work for so many bands and labels, and he's just always working, always busy, like doing huge artists. So he's a friend of my girlfriend's, and she just reached out to him, and I think he was just like, you know, he's done really well for himself. So I think he's just like, yeah, sure, like this is cool, like this is different. This isn't like what I'm usually used to getting.
Like a more like a fun passion project for him to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's something where he's like, I'm not trying to please like big wigs or MTV execs. I can just work,
yeah,
you know.
I don't have the budget to compete with Interscope, so
Yeah.
you know, but he was really you know, amenable, and it was a really fun shoot. It was really effortless. It was like, yeah, let's just meet in Santa Monica Mountains, take some shots at Magic Hour. Okay, cool. Hey, yeah, can we go to your studio and record like these women? And I'm like, okay, cool. And then it just was editing, and his friend did the graphics, the 3D graphics. That's all 3D.
Super cool. Yeah, it's definitely a fun visual to go along with a really great song. Now the now Young and Cold is the record label. Darkness is the name of the album. So for people as we're talking about it want to go check it out, even if they want to pause and jump over and take a look. And beautiful artwork cover. Again, I'm you know a fan. That those are the things that used to grab guys like us back in the day when you would just go thumb through a record store. Very cool artwork on that one. Now this album, it's the first you said. Now how long has it been since you've done another music project? So for you.
Okay, so what I did is I got so deep and lost in the shuffle of producing for other people. So we're talking labels, you know, developing artists, and like lots and lots of time and effort and all that. And I got this opportunity with one of the band, like the glam punk band I was in, like did a reunion and everyone loved it and everyone got back on board.
So what was the name of this band for the people?
It was called Flash Bastard.
Okay.
And so we got this opportunity. We had this investor, and it was like, I'm like, screw record deals, man. It's all about investors. This is like really cool. We get to have the luxury of doing our art and being paid for it, and seeing how we can see this through. And we had this festival booked in Russia, in Vladivostok, which is like right by Japan. And I had to fly to Korea to get over there. So the singer couldn't, his visa got denied from Russia because we're both Canadian living in the States. And so his visa in the States was coming up for renewal. So that's why Russia denied him his entry visa, because I don't know, they're just trying to protect their borders, I guess. Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna go do the festival and I'm gonna sing some songs. And I really enjoyed it. And that was the turning point where I was like, you know what? Like all of the bands that I've been in, I've always been the guy that's the perfect foil for a lead singer with crazy ideas. And I'm like the legitimacy dude grounding it all, making it come to life. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna right now at this stage of my life just like get back into being an artist. So I did a bunch of releases. I spent like a bunch of time in the studios mixing and like going to Harlem to master and with Dave Kutch at the Mastering Palace. And I did a lot of like sort of thing, and I didn't really feel the grounding of the like the song DNA was there. It's just that the way I was sort of lost in my own, like I was scattered with my approach. So what I had is a bunch of genre bended type songs that didn't really, they were kind of dark wave, but they were also like hip hop, It's like Kanye West and Cure had a baby. And it's like, that's kind of what it was. And so I like pulled it all down, man. I burned the ships, Antonio.
Yeah.
You know that phrase, burning the ships?
Yep. Oh yeah.
It's like, I'm not going back. And I just like deleted it all. And then I got really specifically focused in 2021 as to like, I had some meetings with some like executive individuals that were like once the manager of Prince or the A&R rep or the product manager of this individual, and the people that like understand genres of the dark wave. And I was just like, listen, like what's your, and I just sat there and they critiqued it like unrelentlessly. And it was very intense. Like, and I had nothing to do, but I had no option other than just to thank them for their input. And they were sort of like, yeah, it sounds like you're kind of masochistic because we're not saying good things. And I was interested. I mean, whatever. I'm like have a thick skin or whatever. So you got to have that in this industry, especially as an artist. So I just sort of like spent 2021 wrapping my head around like, what is it that I want to say? How do I want to say it? And then how is this the most relevant to what it is that I want to do inside, and not be like, because when I did 130 Korean pop songs, like I got like sort of immersed into the ADD production of like, there's always like it's like 5 or 7 songs sometimes within one song. It's super ADD. And so that sort of had an impact on me in a negative way, in the sense that when I started to sing again and get back into the saddle with the Sweet Kill as my focal point, it was too, it wasn't single-minded in its purpose. So that's what 2021 was about for me.
So sorting through all the massive ideas and feedback and melodies and this and that, and chopping out the fat, and what we got left is darkness.
Yes.
All right.
See, Darkness used to be another song called Radioactive. And I remember when the pandemic started to open up in LA and shows were starting to happen again, I wanted to play this song. I was like, yeah, I'm really stoked about playing Radioactive. It reminds me very much like The Cure, like, 17 Seconds vibes. And my girlfriend at the time was like, said, yeah, but would you book a band at Shadow Zone Night that gave you this as a submission? And I was like, oh no, I was like, wow. The way that she proposed that in a question, it gave me the dignity to make my own decision as to like, oh, so now I know what's wrong with it. And then I just remade it, nice. I just like literally like gutted it, different key, everything, and made it like in a way that, oh, that makes sense. This makes sense now.
Did you play everything on the record?
Except for the drums.
Okay. So the drums are live or programmed?
They're live.
Nice. It's hard to tell these days. I've heard some ridiculous sounds coming out of programmed drums, and I'm like, no, it's not. And like, no, it is. I'm like, wow. That's pretty damn awesome. Now, you chose to do a very interesting cover on this album.
Interesting. Okay. There's a story behind that, but I'm curious as to what you have to say. Yeah.
Okay. It's amazing because I'm going to lead with this. To the praise of the Man in Black, and to Trent Reznor, who I think are two of the most groundbreaking musicians that ever were, because of what they were able to kind of do for their genre and even breaking through genres. I found it interesting that there is this phenomenal song now I've got three versions of, and all hit me in a different way. There's something amazing about the bones, obviously, to that song, which is Hurt, but the way that you gave it life and a different feel really blew me away in a good way, because
Oh,
it's definitely veered away from the original, just as Johnny Cash did it a little more stripped down. And this one, when I heard the bass come in, it's funny because it reminded me of Fascination Street. And I was like, wow, this is giving me like almost like if the Cure wrote this song, this is what that song would have sounded like. Um, so it's now it's a song that's already been covered. So I'm sure there was maybe hesitation there, but you really gave it its own flavor and its own feel, and it was a hit out of the park. I mean, I'm trying not to blow smoke up your ass, let your head get too big, but to tackle a cover that a song that's been already done by two phenomenal artists is probably I would tell my friends, dude, you're out of your mind. Don't cover that song. Um, don't do it. Don't put it on the record. But then when you hear it, you're like, okay, I get it now. It's because when I first looked at the track listings as playing, I didn't think that it was going to be that song. I just figured it was another song called that. And then when I heard it, I was like, wow, very cool. How did that come about?
I just wanted to do. I wanted to give. I believe in covers, the power of the cover. I mean, the Rolling Stones made their career based off of covers,
Oh
so
yeah.
big fan of the Stones. But I also saw bands like Orgy doing Blue Monday, and that sort of gave them a name. So I always think that
Oh
there is
yeah.
some validity to picking the right song and doing it in the right way. But I don't like to do something like Hurt's a tough one. And if anything, in the beginning of my relationship to Nine Inch Nails, that one I felt more than Closer, or
Right.
more than had a whole Black as Your Soul. That one was this is something different. It veered off, and it was the end of the album at that time, and it made sense. And so I just started I do this thing where I listen to music that's instrumental, obviously, and I try melodies over it. And maybe that melody I wrote in my dream that I just quickly sung into my iPhone upon awakening, and I'll be happening to listening to a 17 seconds, or I'll be listening to some album and I'll just start to sing. And if it makes sense, it piques my interest. So I started doing I Hurt Myself Today over Fascination Street. I was like, this works. This would be cool. And so it's just finding the right tempo, because I think Hurt was at the tempo of 60.
Right.
And so I did Fascination Streets, I think, at the tempo 105. So I didn't, and it felt a little slow at 105. Hurt myself today, just didn't
Right. Yeah.
feel,
Yeah.
so I just upped it 9 BPM from Fascination Street to 114. And then I was like, okay, this is cool. This is doable. It's not too rushy. I can play this,
Yeah.
It's not speed metal, but it's still in the
No.
zone. It's in the zone.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
uh I've always, it's funny, I later in life now have gotten kind of more into doing covers. I think I stayed away from doing covers when I was younger because I wasn't a good enough guitar player. you
Right.
know, I was like, I don't know what they're playing. I forced myself to write songs out of the fact that I was like, well, I don't know what that is, but I know I can make this sound here. And now later in life, as I'm more comfortable with it and I've learned more, I'm sitting back and I'm going, oh wow, okay. You know, I was just playing around with a new interface a couple months ago. And as I plugged in my guitar and I kind of grabbed a tone out of Logic Pro X, and I was like, wow, this kind of reminds me of a Ryan Adams song that I really like. So I was like, wait, okay, oh yeah, this is all right, and it's just these 3 chords, and then I just sat down and recorded it, because I accidentally kind of stumbled on a tone that reminded me of it, and then I sat back and I was playing it back, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm like, this was a lot of fun. I was like, why did I fight this for so many years? Um, and it's one of those things that I was kind of got excited about. My daughter and I actually um did a cover because she sings. We did Not in Love by Crystal Castles featuring
Oh
Robert
wow,
Smith. Yeah. So we did a cover of that together,
that's awesome. That's
which was
adorable.
super fun. Yeah. And I'm learning to kind of get into that now. And, I was doing like acoustic singer songwriter stuff for so long. And I've kind of been like tired of just the loneliness of just being the one guy writing. So it's not that I've kind of given up on music, but right now I'm not writing very much. I've just
Mhm.
been enjoying playing songs that I love, and I'm in the midst of working with some people on some music where it's not just me. So I've got a buddy of mine kind of writing a bunch of stuff, sending it to me, and then letting me just create over it because I knew
That's
I was at
great.
that point where I couldn't, not couldn't, I can, but you just kind of sometimes you get beaten down by it. You love it, but you torture and labor over it as well. It's not, I tell people all the time, being the creative person in any art is everyone's like, oh my God, I'm jealous that you can do that. And I'm like, yeah, but sometimes it's a lot of weight,
It can
finding
be.
the words to say and finding like, is this put together like are other people gonna like it? And wait, did I write this already?
Right.
One of those things. So yeah, a cover can be a way to kind of, for me, it was like it's keeping me doing it, and it's giving me, it's giving other songs new life. So I was very excited to that this cover was chosen in a way, being a Nine Inch Nails fan, being a huge Cure fan, and actually being a big Johnny Cash fan as well. I was like, wow, this is kind of combining 3 things that I love. So it was the perfect melting pot for me. I was like, wow, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? A big part of it, I'm not going to blame it all on the Cure, but like I saw the Nine Inch Nails in 2018 played like 5 shows at the Palladium, all in a row. I think Wednesday was a different night or something, but like it was 5 in a row, and I had the luxury of like people gifting me two of those 5 shows. I had a ticket, and and just being in that atmosphere, and it was interesting. I actually had the luxury of recording Mike Garson on a song of mine a while back. And so I didn't know he was playing with Trent. Like, and I
You're
was
like,
like,
wait a
I
minute.
was, I was texting him going, Mike, you're on stage. And he got back to me like in as he was backstage going like, yeah, it was crazy. I'm like, dude, can you get me backstage? He's like, dude, it's like TSA security here. Like I barely got my tech in for this show,
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, cool. But that was a big part of it, being like reminded of the power of the album The Fragile, and knowing
Ooh, I
like
love that album. I feel like it never, I feel like it doesn't get enough love.
I agree.
Yeah.
And he was unabashedly playing like the instrumental pieces on piano in between songs, and it had its own energy live, because in the album The Fragile, I'm just gonna quickly whip it up.
Was that
Um,
was that the tour they did with Soundgarden? Actually,
um,
oh, that might have been 2016. Actually, I'm trying to remember when I saw Nine Inch Nails with Soundgarden here in Long Island.
yeah, I think that's 2016.
Yeah.
But okay, so yeah, like songs like The Frail, and other ones like Lemure, like just really interesting placements within the set, and just being in the midst of all those people, and in the power of the simplicity of just him on piano, and like that kind of got my mind going like, oh yeah, this is something that's a big part of me, and that's why I wanted to, and I just also like Hurt and Closer are the 2 most famous songs or whatever.
Oh
So I just,
yeah.
if I have to pick between both of them, I definitely choose Closer. So, or sorry, Hurt. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Nine Inch Nails was I remember, God, I remember very vividly being in high school when Downward Spiral came out. I remember like going to buy the cassette single,
right?
You know, with the cardboard slide, it was like the slide out single where the cassette slid out. It wasn't even the hard plastic case. And it's always, you know, I always say, to me, Trent Reznor's innovation and what he was able to do recording that first album on his own, really stripped down like that, and really taking a few genres and just, you know, blowing a hole in them and starting this whole sound. You know, I feel like he does not get enough credit for the innovation that came from his music, and how it did break genres. I mean, you know, I knew jocks that would listen to it, and
Yeah.
punks loved it. You know, you could see a Nine Inch Nails sticker on a punk rock kid's skateboard or a hardcore kid, but then the goth kids also had the patch on their leather jacket. So it was like, oh, okay. It was one of those nods, like, yeah, Nine Inch Nails.
I was first introduced to them by my fellow defensive end in football who was driving me home, and he's putting it on. And this guy was like an intense, like aggressive, like jock. And I was like, huh? Like, wait a minute. Hard. I was like expecting some classic rock or whatever. And he's like, yeah, listen to Nine Inch Nails on the way home. I'm like, cool.
Yeah. Well, sounds good. Sign me up. All right. So what do any tours lined up for you? Shows coming up?
This is tricky because it's so self-contained that I don't have any live performances yet, because I've been so focusing on like starting to get the wheels turning for promoting the album, and getting, you know, doing such things that you're offering with this podcast, and getting recognition, and sending out like lots of emails and lots of administrative work. And then also working creatively on more music. Like that's been super, I'm so inspired by this whole experience, and like grinding it out for like a good 3 years there, sort of releasing things and not seeing them hit, and knowing like in the big picture in hindsight why they didn't hit. And now that things are hitting, like I'm feeling this is a very golden opportunity to take advantage of. So creatively, I'm just still, I'm in a new song cycle that,
oh wow, that's great.
And it just, and like you said, it can be sort of like, for example, the song Darkness, you know, into the shadows where evil lies, right? So I had it in Heart Attack, the song was like, nothing's gonna break me, never again, no more, lost in the shadows. I was like, I can't use shadows in Darkness and then use shadows. So
yeah.
So in Ode to Guns N' Roses, I was like, used by illusion. I'm like, that's cool, you know. So I would throw Used by Illusion in there instead of Lost in the Shadows, because they start. So that's the interesting thing of like not being redundant with tropes, and being sort of intentional with other tropes, and using like, you know, metaphors and interesting things to kind of like get the listener intrigued and hook them in just by the intention of it. And so
yeah, well, that chorus does that for me. I mean, even where you repeat heart attack, heart attack, heart attack, and go up again, I was like, ooh, the first time I heard it, and you did the second one was the higher one, I was like, yeah. You know, those little things like that, because those are things that I feared as a songwriter. Am I just going to repeat the line again? But then I'm like, well, there's songs that I love that do that. So it's just how you do it.
Yeah.
But that jump up and the repeating of it again was like the real hit, you know, the home run. You know, it's like I'm a big baseball fan. I'm a big Mets fan over here. So, you know, to me, it was like, you got that hit, but that second one was watching it sail over, you know, over the fence.
Nice. Love that.
Yeah. So I was that song, oof, you know, that's one of the ones where if I'm listening to it at home, and it comes on, I'm like, oh, let me raise the volume a little bit, you know.
That's awesome. So like, I mean, the songs to me start on the piano, they start on the guitar, they start on a bass and drum groove. They can start on a synth exploration. Here's the deal. Whenever I get a synth and I start like exploring the sounds, it's like, there's a song. All right. Like I try to like compartmentalize and organize like the bass area. And these are the top bass sounds. And these are the tops. And every time it takes like hours go by and like 4 or 5 motifs for potential songs have evolved as a result of just screwing with stuff.
Yeah, I was very shocked and not very I guess I was shocked, but it made sense afterwards when Jason told me his songs all start with bass. He's like, I write, and he was like, that helps me keep them without veering a million places. Cause if I'm writing them on guitar, I can go too many places. And I was like, wow, okay. Yeah. And I was like, that's very, all these little things that, I love that aspect of music and podcasting. I mean, I got into listening to more podcasts and started mine when COVID hit because it was a way to still stay connected musically. And a lot of people were doing some really, really great stuff. I remember Butch Walker and Brian Fallon were doing an Instagram live together talking about how they write songs. And they were just going into like the whole conversation of lyrics first or music first.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, this is amazing. It's music to my ears, no pun intended. But it allowed people to sit back, to share more, to, hone the songs. And I think for as bad as COVID has been, all the lives it's taken, jobs and, the struggling, I think from a creative standpoint, it's allowed people to fall in love with the art again in a different way.
Mhm.
I think there's more personalness now going on in things, even just the fact that it was taken away from us from so long. You're re-falling in love with the live music. And like now I'm like sitting there writing out my calendar and I'm like, oh my God, all these things that got rescheduled. I'm like, I've got too much to do in the next 2 months. Like now it's the problem of shit. I mean, one of my favorite bands is rolling in through town and they're playing the night that I'm going to see Henry Rollins do a speaking engagement.
Yeah.
The next day is my birthday, and the day after that, I'm going to see Quicksand. And then they were like, they added a second show, and it's just, I'm like, I've never had so many. There's one night where there's 3 things I want to do musically, and it's like, I know, I was like, it's a really shitty problem to have, but I'm glad that we're having these problems again. you know?
That's a quality. Yeah, I don't feel sorry for you.
Right.
You got a very full life, and it's very blessed. And interesting, like you sparked the concept of like lyrics versus music, music versus lyrics, or which comes first. It's like anything's possible. I have this. My mom used to be a secretary, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a typewriter in the corner there.
Oh wow.
That round thing. It's a typewriter, and I wrote "Sea of Fate" on that when I started dating my girlfriend. Just like poetically, I was like, I'm gonna write her, I'm gonna go stream consciousness. So in a typewriter setting, like there's no, I don't have whiteout, and I'm like making mistakes and typos, but I'm like plunking it out like very viscerally. It's very like cathartic. And then I look back at it. Oh yeah. So when I came back from Boston in mid-November, it was like going through the deal with Young and Cold was going through. And at the time it was only 8 songs. So I was like, okay,
got to fill this record out.
Yeah. And I was like, so I'm like, oh yeah, that song, that stream of consciousness I wrote. And then I had this like piece of music, and I don't know if you see the similarities, but there's like a lot of Cure influence in Sea of Fate. The last song,
yeah.
And it was, the whole purpose of that was to create like a light at the end of the tunnel of this darkness, right? So it's the last song of the album for an intentional reason. It's like a little bit more uplifting. But that was like sort of like, it's interesting how that was just a bunch of poem. It was a poem that I turned in. Obviously, I had to keep rewriting it. Like once I got it into my Word document, and I made the decision to make this come alive and be like on the album. And so there's just like anything goes. It's like it's chicken or the egg. It's like I don't know, like whatever. If it's the chicken one day, maybe next. I don't care.
Yeah, there's times I'll be driving and I'll just come up with lines, and I'm like, oh man, I need to. And then that'll spark something. But then there's times I'm sitting on the couch, TV on, and I'm just thumbing the guitar, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I like that. So, I've used both ways in my songwriting. And I've been trying to get to that. Well, maybe I'll just keep a notebook and just write out chorus ideas and things as they're coming to me, and not worry that the song is not there for it yet. So that's been
Yeah.
my new thing that, kind of my promise I've made to myself as a musician. Like, let me get into doing that and see where that takes me.
I crossed about 3 ideas off of, I have a text thread with myself. I crossed about 3 ideas off of that going through this last song I was writing, because I was like trying to find like things in the verse, and there's 3 ideas that I texted myself from as far back as 3 years ago,
Wow.
that I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that would work. That's a cool launch pad for the second verse. And oh yeah, that would be a nice way to, segue into the chorus, like, thematically. And so yeah, it's like, you never know. I remember seeing this documentary of Mick Jagger in the studio, and he was like, just like, oh, wait a minute. And he's like going through this book when pages are falling out. And he's like, I got it. And he found some lyric that made sense at that moment that he needed it. It's interesting, right? You never know.
Yeah, that's true. So I want to hit you with some fun questions. All right. So what band got you to that point where you fell in love with music? Maybe it's just a song, maybe it's a full band. Like, what is that thing that you heard?
It's Kiss,
Where
man.
Kiss. Okay.
Kiss Destroyer. I was in Venezuela, didn't speak any Spanish. My mom, and she was showing me like where she grew up, and then everyone was talking Spanish, and I was kind of bummed that no one could, like, I couldn't speak and no one would understand me except for my mom. So I just found Kiss Destroyer. They're standing on top of the cities that are burning. They're looking really menacing. I remember putting it on going, this doesn't sound like it looks. I remember thinking that, and I was 6, and I was like, And so, but I liked it. I liked the riffs, that's all I really remember. And then I remember coming back to Canada, looking for Kiss. So I put my radio underneath my pillow at night, scrolling the radio stations, looking for Kiss, pretending I'm asleep. My mom would come over, I had the radio underneath.
Right. Yeah.
I find Kiss, and then I found I Love Rock and Roll. And I remember the next day at school, I said to everybody, I walked into the classroom, I'm in grade 1 or 2, and I'm like, I found it. And everyone's just, what?
Like what?
Found it. It's rock
Play-Doh?
and roll. It's rock and roll. I love rock and roll. And everyone was just like, kind of didn't know how to deal with that. Like, I was just, I was super passionate, and I knew right at that moment that that's what my life is going to be. I didn't know what it was going to manifest into. I just knew that was what I needed to do. Right, and get into. Yeah.
Love that. When did you start playing music? So you said bass was your first instrument?
Yeah. So 14, I was working at McDonald's. I saved up. I went down to the music store, and I said to the guy, I'm like, I figured 4 strings would be easy.
Right.
Instead of 6. So I was figuring like, I'm like, hey man, so if this doesn't really work out, like, can I get my money back if I return it? And he looked at me, looked down at my $200. He's like, no. I was like, oh. And instead of being like argumentative or wide-eyed or whatever, I was like, okay. And I made that decision at that moment that I'm committing to this instrument. And I really,
you were like, if I'm giving up 200 hard-earned dollars, I'm making this thing work.
Yeah. And I remember playing like along to, at the time, Metallica, Led Zeppelin, and Iron Maiden, and these are like, Guns N' Roses. These are the riffs that I was like trying to like figure out. Like, I remember when I first learned Number of the Beast, I was like super stoked. Right?
Yeah. Well, and it's also at that pace that was giving you some finger strength as you're going through it.
Right.
All right. So, what is your go-to karaoke song?
I'd like to do things that are like off the beaten path. So like Father Figure by George Michael. I will be your father figure. Put your tiny hands in mine. I will be your preacher, teacher. And everyone's just kind of like, or like Backstreet Boys, I Want It That Way, just to be like ironic. But if it came down to like my strengths, I'd pick a Queen song like Fat Bottom Girls or Bohemian Rhapsody. Night
I'm a
Train by Guns N' Roses.
huge Queen fan myself.
Yeah.
My little guy too. He's got, he's 11. He's got Freddie Mercury posters all over his walls. Yeah.
Man after my heart.
Yeah, he loves it. I know this is going to be a tough one, and I'm not going to hold you to these because I'm putting you on the spot, but top 3 desert island albums.
Oh, albums. Okay. Exile, Main Street, Rolling Stones, Disintegration, The Cure, and the third one. It's tricky because now I'm like, now the
Now you're down
pressure's
to
on
one,
because
so it's like
yeah, exactly. Now like the finale would probably be oh, I'd have to say Destroyer by Kiss.
yeah, okay, there you go. That's
Yeah,
that's a pretty solid list. I
yeah.
mean,
It's a diverse list.
yeah, yeah. Well, you have to if you're gonna be stuck with only three. You gotta have that.
Yeah.
And what is um a movie that you really connect with?
Um,
I know we talked a lot of music, so I wanted to give a little bit love
I,
to movies.
I would go like Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker.
Oh,
You're familiar with that one? He's a
um,
Russian guy.
I am not, but I know of it. Never seen it, but I guarantee my fiance has. That's her.
It's dark and
Yeah.
but it's also like, I mean, the story behind the making of it is insane. Like they had so many, like it's the third attempt. What was released was the third attempt. The first attempts, there was just like issues with the film got like destroyed.
Oh wow.
Unmanageable and unimaginable things happened in the second one. And but the premise of it is that it's sci-fi, and I'm super sci-fi guy.
Mhm.
Um, all about Raised by Wolves right now. Ridley
Cool.
Scott's my hero.
Mhm. Yeah,
So, but
I haven't dove into the second yet.
second season.
Yeah, I've been waiting because we were like in the middle of watching stuff, but really enjoyed the first one.
I've been watching a lot of breakdowns. There's 8 episodes. I thought there were 6, but there's 8,
Okay.
and the first 4 are like rebuilding the whole what you're presented with.
Right.
So it's a little bit like kind of like, okay, you got to wrap my head around this now. Okay, no, this is happening. Okay, and then on episode 5, it's just like, oh, now this is good.
It's like Release the Hounds.
Yeah, and episode 6, it's like, oh, this is getting really good. So there's 2 more episodes. So I would say like the first half like is a bit of a grind, but
Mhm.
yeah, but I'm a visual guy. Like I love horror movies, grew up on them. Um, and I love mystery and I love sci-fi for sure.
Yeah. Did you give a shout to the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix? Did you watch that
I
yet?
haven't yet. I haven't.
I enjoyed it. You know,
Okay, because
I love I'm an old school slasher horror movie kind of guy for sure. And I love the first 2 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. Like in the horror genre, I adore those. And I just had to like a lot of things, I put it on and it was just great cinematography and good kills. I was
yeah,
like, that's a slasher movie. When people are like plot hole storyline, but I'm like, relax.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm not writing a thesis on film at NYU. I'm sitting down and I'm enjoying a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see blood splatter, screaming, and beautiful cinematography in it though. So my friends do a podcast called the Red River Podcast, which and they just kind of did a whole Texas Chainsaw Massacre episode. And they were saying that the guys that were originally doing the film, they Netflix wasn't loving how it was going. And the cinematographer actually took over directing the movie, which is why you're getting some really beautiful cinematic
Good to know.
shots
Okay.
in it, which is kind of cool. It very like looks, like I said, looks good, great kills, you
Yeah.
know, the fun quirkiness you want out of a slasher movie. And I was like,
Well,
oh.
that's interesting
And,
because there's 2 movies that I've watched back in the day of Rewind, the VHS.
mhm.
There's 2 movies that I watched and I had to rewind and watch again. One of them was Slapshot, and the
Oh
other one
yeah.
was Texas Chainsaw. Like when I
Mhm.
first saw that start to finish, I was like, I got to watch this again now. So
Yeah.
I have a very strong reverence and relationship to the original. I saw the remake, in 2010 or something? Remember
Well, there
that?
was all those. There was the remake. There was Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, which I thought was fantastic. then there was like Leatherface.
Don't think I saw the
The
beginning of the
straight
other.
remake might have been, I think it was 2014 or 16, but yeah, I liked the remake. I didn't hate it.
I didn't.
I'm usually anti remake. Like I still haven't watched the Evil Dead one because I love Evil Dead so much
Oh.
that I don't want to touch watching that movie at all. I'm, I'm like, give me Bruce Campbell or give me death.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think I developed this technique watching Evil Dead that if shit's getting weird and I can't deal with it, I'll look at the side of the TV where it meets the wall and be
Mhm.
like, there's the side of this plastic apparatus. There is the wall behind it. Like I developed this technique to sort of like I'm still sort of watching it, but I'm like detaching myself from the fear and anxiety of like what's going to happen next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I've always loved the older horror movies, and like I said, the slasher films are great. Um, have you seen Terrifier?
No, I haven't.
Write that one down. The second one is about to come out. It
Is
is really good.
what
Um,
year?
Terrifier, I want to say it had its full on release. I want to say 2018, but it was a very slow rolling ball. Um, it was originally the guy who made it. It was originally like a quick like internet YouTube thing. Then it ended up on a bunch of 3 short films called All Hallows Eve. And when that had picked up a little bit of steam in the underground of horror, he took Art the Clown, who is that character, and made the movie Terrifier. Um, Very cool, like a very quiet mime like clown just going on this killing spree on Halloween night. Very cool. Done very independently, not big budget. I think he's got a little bit more of a budget on the second one that's coming out, but it's as far as a newer kind of slasher movie and still being like independent and cool, it's one of my favorites that I've seen probably in the last decade for sure.
Awesome. I wrote it. I just texted it to myself. So it's now in the thread. Okay.
Yeah.
Happening.
Cool. Where can everyone find you?
I'm so lucky and blessed to have the sweet kill across all platforms. There's no numbers, there's no whatever you call it,
Underscore.
underscores or dashes or whatever. So yeah, the sweet kill. We have one video right now out on the YouTube. There's a few that are in the can that I'm just waiting to sort of release as the evolution of the promotion starts. So there's a video for Darkness, which I'm very excited. It's got a
Yeah.
panther in it. So don't mess with the panther because he'll
No.
get you.
Yeah, you'll
Nope. Murphy the Panther was like that was a nice day on set. That was for sure. Like
Oh,
just
I
the
bet.
presence of like a live animal that is like could just rip your head off. So that was cool. And then there's another one called Satellite. There's another video for Satellite. So pretty much the first 3 songs of the album have videos.
Okay, cool.
And what I'm looking at potentially doing a video for Cold. So this one, it gives much sort of like advertisement opportunities, for the visuals of what this is and the presentation of the sweet kill. And yeah, so it's like all over the place. And you can pre-order the vinyl and the CD on the Bandcamp. So I think Bandcamp works is the sweetkill.bandcamp.com or something. I think that's the URL.
Right.
But
Yeah,
other than
the
that,
the website brings you to it if you do click on the link. To pre-order, it'll bring you to the Bandcamp because that's how I
yeah,
stumbled on getting that vinyl that I have to order for sure. Uh,
yeah, sweetkill.bandcamp.com. That's how you pre-order the CD and vinyl.
Nice. Yeah, and there's a lot of great visuals behind the songs as well on the streaming platforms. I love that, and I've become a big fan of that.
Yeah, the canvas
So
option on Spotify is
so
so fun.
yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun. And that's where I'll sometimes use the smart TV in my house with the Spotify app because then the play is kind of big on the
Yeah.
TV. It's really cool. It gives a lot of fun to it, a lot of creativity. You can tell how much love and passion you put into your music. Those little things and those little accents of detail and wanting to give the listener another experience is really great. So as a listener and now a fan, thank you. Definitely appreciate that. a lot. Look forward to kind of what's coming next, new music. And I'm hoping at some point you take that show on the road and come to New York.
Absolutely, would
Because
love to.
yeah, there's definitely there's the East Coast has some, it has some post-punk kind of dark wave thing growing here.
Cool.
When actors are going to be in town in
Boot
April, I'm going to
Blacks.
see them with Boot Blacks, yeah,
Yeah.
which are from Brooklyn, and they're going to be playing St. Vitus in Brooklyn, which is one of my favorite clubs. Um, Love those. The owners are sweet friends, old friends of mine. I've seen a lot of great shows there already. It's kind of become the new CBGBs of New York.
Nice. Awesome.
Very cool place that you would fit right in on that stage. So when you're getting ready to come through, if you need to get connected to someone, please let me know. you know
Absolutely. Yeah.
so I'm hoping someday too, if you and Jason are going to share a stage together, even if it's in LA, maybe I'll fly out there, and I would see that show for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to play with them. It'd be great. Be like a nice circling back to the old, Vancouver, brethren.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. So thanks so much for doing the podcast. I had a really good time chatting with you. I look forward to everything that's coming out next. And keep doing what you're doing. And any new projects that you're recording for bands that you kind of want to
I'm working with a woman named
shout out?
Arden. Yeah, her name's Arden, and her moniker is Arden and the Wolves. And we're doing an album right now. And I'm like one of the many people. So we got Mark Gemini Thwaite from the guitar player Peter Murphy is on it.
Oh, that's rad.
And it's kind of it's like there's some mixes and co-productions with Michael Patterson, who did She Wants Revenge and Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. So yeah, it's kind of got like, it's got a, I'm blessed to be a writer on it, but I'm also recording, and doing what I do, playing all the instruments kind of thing. So yeah, like we're working on some stuff at the moment, and that's like sort of the new artist I'm excited to have. When she drops her stuff, it's going to be pretty epic. Like it's a lot of energy put into that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, well, keep creating, stay safe, and we'll talk again soon, hopefully.
Oh, I had one more thing I wanted to say.
Oh, shoot.
I'm honored to be a part of this and stuff. And I wanted to, one of the big things that got me very specific on getting single-minded was I created this Spotify playlist called Dark and Gothic 2022.
Yes,
and
I stumbled on it.
Of course, it was like when I started, it was 2021. And I've been doing this Spotify playlist where I'm just like bringing in bands that I've like sort of, my girlfriend finds them or I find them. And then I sort of, juxtapose them with like the greats, like The Cure, Depeche Mode, and the Smiths, whatever, Christian Death, and sort of like, and so it's an interesting way to kind of get connected with other artists and like people like want to be on the Spotify playlist and all these, it's like an interesting thing that really helped sort of codify for me the artistic direction. So yeah, if you can follow that, by all means.
I will for sure. And I'm going to give you a band that I recently discovered from Boston that you should check out. Perfect. To maybe go on. They're called House of Harm.
That's a great name.
I actually sent it to Jason and he was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. My friends do a podcast called the Holy Hour podcast, which is all about The Cure as well. And I go on their podcast a lot. So we just interviewed these guys. They are young from Boston, like they're not even 30, and they're creating this very Cure, Depeche Mode inspired sound. Amazing. In the middle of Boston that's really only known for like drunken Irish punk rock. Yeah, and they're standing out on their own, and they have their second record's getting ready to come out. So I've been trying to spread the love about them as well. It's funny because I grew up here on Long Island, New York, and we're kind of, we pride ourselves in, the punk rock and the hardcore. And I'm most known for being the original singer of Taking Back Sunday, even though what that band is now is nothing like what it was or what I even listened to. But my fiance, Melissa, is, a goth girl, and she's like, I've turned you goth. You're listening to all this dark wave and all that. And I'm like, babe, I've been listening to The Cure like my whole life, and Depeche Mode and Duran Duran. I was like, I had one foot in. I just didn't, I now have this outlet to find all this, music. She took me to see Nitzareb like a couple months ago, which was awesome. But like I said, I was like, babe, I've always listened to Nine Inch Nails and The Cure. I'm like, they're like my favorite band. I have Robert Smith tattooed on my leg.
That's respect. Yes.
Yeah. So it's just so fun that I have this whole new genre, because now one band leads you to another, which leads you to another, and it's so much fun. And I've never been a person that has held myself back in listening to certain types of music. A great song is a great song.
Yep.
There's a guy I've been listening to a lot lately from from Ohio, Arlo McKinley. He's a kind of country guy, but he also was like rooted in punk rock and stuff. And his stuff is very kind of like beautiful, slow, kind of outlaw country kind of thing that he's got going on. And I'm like, I don't want to ever say I'm this in music, I'm that in music, or I only like this. That's a crazy way to be, but a playlist like that you've created is the way that I've been discovering a lot of music. So this is the future of sharing music.
Yep.
We are our own PR, we're our own record labels, we're our own everything now, and it's such a fun, it's a fun time to be a music lover.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so grateful.
So I will absolutely follow that, and we'll share that on all the social media and all that fun stuff. So yeah, nobody speaks. This is the podcast, but we got to speak today, and we're breaking that whole arguing about stuff and just talking about music and fun things. So
yeah,
thanks for being a part of
art, man.
All right, take it easy, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Talk to you soon.
Later.